It is Friday, March 14th, 2025. This is another edition of Football Today. You know my dudes, Bobby Skinner, Justin Penik. I am Chris Rose. Producer Connor is here as well. Penik, I'm going to start with you. We had an episode earlier this week, and then later on in the day, I'm just kind of shuffling through social media, and I see Bobby Skinner wish you a happy birthday. How in the world know that it was your birthday when we were recording that day?
Well, I'm a humble man, Chris Rose, so I didn't want to hop on and be like, "Oh, it's my birthday." No, but I had a good day, and hey, this is a crazy week. I've accepted for the rest of my life that the new league year is gonna always kind of begin around my birthday, and we're gonna have to deal with this is a grind week, this is a work week. But I had a good day. I requested thin chicken cutlets and mashed potatoes for dinner, and I got it. And my football team got better, but we're still waiting on a quarterback, which we're gonna talk about.
Bobby, so you gave him a salute on social media. Did you know when we were taping the show that it was his birthday?
Yeah, the issue is that we were recording at midnight the night before on Talking Giants.
And then you did a film breakdown after.
Well, and I wished him a happy birthday on that, so it wasn't on the top of my head. But
you had fog brain.
And Justin's so humble. You know how you know he's humble? He'll tell you.
Yeah, usually the most humble people have to tell you that they're really humble and they work hard.
That's adorable. Well, a belated, what is this, 27?
Whoa, yeah, good, really good guess, yes.
Okay. That's pretty good. I too remember when I was 27. Do you want to know where I was when I was 27?
I was about to ask, what were you doing?
I had just gotten married a year before and was working at CNN Sports Illustrated in Atlanta, the now
awesome.
defunct CNN Sports Illustrated. But it became the 24-hour news network of CNN. I was one of 5 new anchors brought in there. So, yeah, I was a kid. It was fun. I was around some legends of this industry. That's for another time, gentlemen.
Me too. I was starting the Giants Nation podcast with Danny King at 27.
Danny King, yeah.
And now he works for TMZ, so how about that?
Thataway. That's good. How old are you, Bobby? 30?
33.
33.
So 6 years ago.
Okay. Got it. All right, we will get to the quarterback news, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, all sorts of stuff in just a bit. But we're going to start with the Dallas Cowboys, whom we haven't really talked a lot about this offseason, but things got very interesting because of a now former Dallas Cowboy. Tank Lawrence ended up taking a 3-year deal, I believe, with the Seattle Seahawks. And then he gave out this interview.
You know, Dallas is my home. I made my home there. You know, my family lives there. You know, I'm forever going to be there, but, you know, I know for sure I'm not going to win a Super Bowl there. So, yeah. We here.
DeMarcus Lawrence, welcome to the Seahawks. Thanks for joining us.
So it got a little spicy there at the end, and you know who noticed? None other than Micah Parsons, who then went on social media, and he said, "That's what rejection and envy look like. This is some clown shit." Well, DeMarcus Lawrence saw that tweet, and then he responded by saying, "Calling me a clown won't change the fact that I told the truth. Maybe if you spent less time tweeting and more time winning, I wouldn't have left."
My favorite response to that was more time winning. You were on the same team, dumbass. That was my favorite response to it. But I kind of like Micah Parsons kind of taking a jab at him, right? Let's bring back some hate and anger in football. All the players are buddy now doing jersey swaps. I kind of like it a little bit. DeMarcus Lawrence takes a shot. Micah Parsons takes a shot back. And now we got a real rivalry between Dallas and Seattle.
DeMarcus Lawrence isn't wrong, though. And I think a lot of Dallas fans...
Is he going to win one in Seattle?
Probably not, but I think a lot of Dallas fans honestly feel the same way. I haven't seen a fan base that growing up was so kind of blinded by, we them boys, we're going to win it this year. I think they said it for so long that now they're finally getting tired of it. That I think this fan base is just stuck in purgatory of, you know what, we got stars, we're okay, we're decent, but we know when it all comes down to it that we're not going to get it done. And if anything, I think this team is getting worse and is really solely carried by its stars, where, a couple years ago, and hey, producer Connor and I, we were even talking about that 2014 Dallas teams, and those teams of Dallas in the 2010s, like those were complete football teams with superstars. Now I think the Dallas Cowboy roster is a bad roster with stars that's going to carry them. So I don't think DeMarcus Lawrence is wrong, and I don't think a lot of Cowboy fans will actually disagree with him.
I think it all depends on who the Giants get at quarterback. The Dallas could be staring at a fourth place season. They could end up last in that NFC East, and it wouldn't totally shock me. I went through and combed some of the local rags and stuff like that, and some people feel like, well, they've made some decent additions with Kenneth Murray and Jack Sanborn at linebacker. I don't think those are great additions at all. Javonte Williams, they got on a 1-year deal for no money, and they hope that he'll hit a home run. Well, he's gotten over 800 yards one time in his career and has never had more than 4 touchdowns in a single season. So, I mean, can they add in the draft? They absolutely can. Not only can they
need
have
to.
They
Yes.
have to. And that's the thing is that, if you're not going to go out and spend money in free agency, and I'm not full bore on doing it all the time, but the numbers over the last few years say that the team that does spend the most money in free agency will improve their win total by at least 3 games. That's happened over the last 5 or 6 years. The Cowboys have elected pretty much to sit it out, whether it's because they don't have the cap space or they just aren't interested in building their roster that way. If you want to do that, you damn well better hit on the draft. And they haven't done it well enough. And the only reason we talk about the Dallas Cowboys is because they're the Dallas Cowboys, not because they're a significant part of the NFL puzzle, Bobby.
I disagree with that last part. I mean, they've been really good and relevant. Last year, Dak got injured, and then that was that. They ended up winning 7 games last year. So I don't think it depends on if Dak Prescott's healthy for a full year and CeeDee Lamb is healthy for a full year, they're a team that's winning more games than they lose. And I think that's the reality. Now, the question with them is they do fall short in the playoffs, but the reason we judge them is not because, they just fall short in the playoffs, not because they're the Pittsburgh Steelers, but because they should be winning in the playoffs. They've had the talent to win the playoffs. Now, they are entering a time where I think that roster is about as weak as it's been in a long, long time. So I think they are entering that era, Chris Rose, but I don't think they've been that since they've had Dak Prescott as their quarterback.
Okay, that's fair. Maybe I'll take that back a little bit. But they also have the longest drought of appearing in an NFC title game. It had been Washington until this past season. We know that there's at least 2 teams better than them in their division, right? We all feel like Washington, that wasn't just a 1-year, wow, it all came together. Right?
I think they could be a similar level of team next year, right? Like Washington comes down to earth a little bit, but Jaden Daniels, I think, is amazing. But Washington, I love the way they've built the team. They still do have a lot of holes and weaknesses on that team.
But I don't think that they're worse than the Dallas Cowboys, do you?
Me either, but I'm saying I don't think they're like levels apart of just like talent on the roster.
Okay. I mean, so is it just it's only going to get better when Jerry Jones isn't in the picture? I mean, is this what it's come down to with the Dallas Cowboys, or is there a way to solve this, Penik?
No, I think, and again, I have some friends that are Cowboy fans, so I that's how I like to stay connected. You get the pulse of the fan base, right? And I think they feel like Stephen Jones is going to keep things kind of status quo, and I think philosophically, Stephen Jones is kind of running things in Dallas along with Jerry, but I think the decisions in free agency to how to attack things philosophically, that I still think is Stephen Jones. Now I think they draft very well. That's not a question. But for a team that should be all in, for a team that is called America's team, a team that honestly gets comparisons to the New York Yankees, that there's similar shared fan bases there. At least the Yankees go out and they spend money and they try. And Jerry Jones talks a big game, he wants to go out there and spend and try. And he does spend on his own dudes, but also it goes against him because he waits until the last minute to pay these players, and that's why they have to get paid more and more money. And they reset all these markets because you should be extending Micah Parsons right now. You should have extended CeeDee Lamb 2 years ago. The Dak Prescott deal should have been done 2 years ago. So talk a big game, but I feel like they just really don't back it up.
And that's where they get in trouble, is because they don't stay ahead of the game with again, it's if we're talking about some middle of the road player and extending them, and you don't get it done right away, it's understandable. With Micah Parsons, with CeeDee Lamb, if you knew you were going to keep Dak, not doing all this stuff early, all it does is hurt you, and now it hurts them in free agency where they feel like they can't go make a couple nice moves, right? No one, like you said, Rose, no one's expecting them to go all in on free agency and spend the most money, but you can do a couple things per year instead of just averaging bad players, which is what they've done over the last couple of years.
Where did Dallas Cowboys finish this year? I know the rosters aren't complete. We still have the draft coming up in about 5 weeks. Where do you guys feel about this team?
If Dak stays healthy, I think they'll be the 6 or 7 seed in the NFC.
Well, you think they're going to be that good?
Yeah, I mean, anytime Dak has been healthy, they've been a playoff team.
I think they get 6 wins is the floor, and I think 9 wins is the ceiling. Which
Boy.
that could get you into 9 wins can get you into the playoffs.
So I don't think that they're better than the 2 teams that finished ahead of them in the NFC East last year. There's going to be a team from the South. I don't know if there will be a second. There's, I think the Niners, whom we'll discuss in a bit, are kind of a little bit of the wild card, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got, who knows what Chicago's going to be in that NFC North, but they've got some monsters in that division, right?
All 4 teams.
Yeah, all 4 teams you could make a case for, I think. I don't know. I think Dallas is 7, 8, 9, depending on how the draft shakes out and what sort of participation everybody gets from a rookie class. But they just feel like another team. And I do feel like we're going to be talking a lot about them this year just because they got a star on the side of their helmet. And that is a bad place to be, that they're just talking about you because people feel like the brand needs to be talked about.
They probably are just another team, but I think just being another team in the NFC when you have Dak Prescott as your QB gets you in the playoffs.
Yeah, their stars are really good.
Let's go. I mean, Commanders, Eagles, playoffs. Lions, Vikings are not locks, but we feel good that they'll be. Actually, you know what? Vikings aren't even a lock. We don't even know who they're going to be playing a quarterback.
Right.
Lions are a lock. Let's just say 2 from the NFC North are a lock between Vikings and Packers. 4, 1 from the NFC South, 5, 1 from the NFC West, 6. The Cowboys, I can see very easily being that 17. And then some quarterback gets injured, like Dallas's quarterback got injured and falls out. Like, it's just the way it goes. So I think
you are very optimistic.
I don't feel like that's if you have Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons, I feel like that's a low bar to reach.
Okay. Let's get to the quarterback situation. Russell Wilson was in Cleveland on Thursday. He's in New Jersey with the Giants on Friday. Everybody, it seems like, is waiting on Aaron Rodgers, who might still be roaming the beach in Malibu, although I doubt it because the weather's been so poor. So if so, that blanket over his head is probably very damp at this point. He hasn't had any huge contact, it sounds like, with a lot of these teams that have availabilities, whether that is indeed the Giants or the Steelers, or we keep hearing rumblings about the Minnesota Vikings. What aspect of this are you most interested in, Bobby Skinner, with Rodgers?
I'm more interested in the domino effect. As long as if he goes to Minnesota, then I actually think Minnesota's like a legit contender. But I don't think that's happening. I mean, I think we're all assuming he goes to Pittsburgh, but we also don't know what he's thinking. It's just the domino effect. Does that lead to Russell Wilson to the Giants? Do the Giants get ahead of this and realize they're not getting Aaron Rodgers and sign Russell Wilson, later today when this episode is out? Where does Joe Flacco and I think it's the more so the domino effect of once he's signed with most likely the Steelers and what happens. But it will be, again, him with the Steelers, I think is pretty. That may not go really well, right? Like George Pickens and Aaron Rodgers, I do not think is a great match. DK Metcalf's a really good wide receiver, but we don't view him as like the change your team type of wide receiver one. He's worse than Garrett Wilson, who was with the Jets last year, and hell, he's worse than Devontae Adams, I think, at this point as well too. But probably similar tier. But Devontae Adams fits what Rodgers wants better. And then, they're asking a lot of young offensive linemen to grow up real quick. Like, I don't think it's this great situation in Pittsburgh. I think it's just stability with Mike Tomlin and that defense.
Rose, what's your take on the timing of this? Because, as a fan that possibly wanted Aaron Rodgers to join my team, and the reality's kind of set in that probably won't happen. Like, I do think he's going to go to Pittsburgh, or he's just waiting for Minnesota to accept him. I thought that maybe, hey, after the disastrous 2 years that was, and maybe he would look at himself in the mirror and be like, you know what? Making things about me was maybe part of the reason why the last 2 years have been disastrous. So maybe I'll be a little bit more quiet and do things a little bit more conventional. Shame on me for thinking that may happen. He's been allowed to talk to teams for, I think, basically the last 2 weeks. It wasn't just the beginning of the new league year or, the beginning of the tampering period. The Jets gave him permission to talk to teams the last 2 weeks. So what is your take on the timing of this? Because even guys like Rappaport and Schefter seem really bothered by it.
I'm not bothered by it. He can make whatever, he's earned that, whatever decision he wants to make. It's almost a little bit like parenting, where the organizations take on the role of being parents, and you have to set ultimatums sometimes. I would say, hey, Aaron, we would love to have you here. We think you are a difference maker. We think you can set this building the right direction, or if you're the Steelers, who don't need to be set in the right direction, but rather we think you are the missing piece to us getting back in the playoff win column, and then we'll all go on this amazing journey together. But I would say, hey, we understand that maybe you're not ready to make a decision, but we have to be ready, and I hope you respect that. And if you're not ready, that's okay, but we just have to move on. Like that, you have to do that. Could you imagine if Aaron Rodgers 3 weeks from today decides that he doesn't want to play football anymore, and Russell Wilson has signed elsewhere? Well, what's the Steelers' option? What do the Steelers do? Where would they turn?
I don't think they have a quarterback on the roster right now.
They just signed Mason Rudolph.
Oh, congratulations.
He's back.
Is Duck Hodges around still? But that's my point.
Ben
Literally,
DiNucci.
You can't not. I suppose you could try and figure out how to get Kirk Cousins to town if you wanted to. You might have to trade up to go get him.
I know. Just throwing that out there.
Right, but do you understand what I'm saying? Is that these teams have to take a stance at some point. And if they're going to play the waiting game, it's not even the perfect situation if he does walk through your doors. You have to be honest with yourself if you're the Steelers. Like, the sell job to Rodgers is, we think you're the missing piece. Behind closed doors, you might look at the film and say, we're probably in the same position we were last year, with Russell Wilson.
And this is a key part of this too, because with Rodgers you get a lot of baggage, and this is where we said on Talking Giants this morning, it's like, damn it, we got the Fell for it again award, where we're like, you think as a reasonable person, right? Like, how the Jets went is probably a little bit of a humbling experience for Aaron Rodgers, right? And it may change his approach on his, as he turns 41 years old and he's on a new team or something like that. It's like, nope, it hasn't, right? Why did you fall for it again? Why would you think that Aaron Rodgers has changed in that? And part of bringing him in for this era, if you're the Steelers or the Giants, is not giving him control over what he wants with stuff. Like, he's got to kind of buy into what you're doing, and I don't think that you're getting that. So to be desperate for that, and like you said, Rose, where I don't think he played great ball last year. I know the touchdown to interception ratio is nice, but there's some, there is some bad ball on film last year for Aaron Rodgers. If I were, like you said, Rose, if I were one of these teams, I'd be like, all right, like, we need the decision by the end of the day, right? If you don't want to pick us and that turns you off from us, fine, but we need to have a quarterback for next year, and we can't afford to have guys walk elsewhere.
Okay, I want to ask this. Number one, if Aaron Rodgers goes to Pittsburgh, how much of an upgrade is that over the quarterback play they had last year?
I think it's a pretty decent upgrade. And then when you consider the fact that DK Metcalf is there as well too, we'll see how they add. I think they can add a nice, slot receiver to go with them. The Pickens thing is it's gonna be really interesting to see how that relationship would go. But nonetheless, he's really talented, and Rodgers can get him the ball.
Okay. If Rodgers elects to go elsewhere or wants to retire, what should the Steelers do? Penik?
I don't know. Cousins, the pivot would have to be working something out. What else?
I actually
Jameis, Flacco?
I think Mason Rudolph would be a better option than Kirk Cousins at this point.
What?
Did you see Kirk Cousins at the end of the last year?
Yes, I did, and he claims that he was injured, even though he was not on the injury report.
Sure, but that's a big chance to take. That that's flashbacks of Matt Ryan with the Colts. Like, oh, he's not washed, and he gets to Indianapolis and he is 100% washed. Like, I'm not taking that chance for Kirk Cousins. And again, I guess you could bring in Kirk Cousins and you still have Mason Rudolph on the team. But yeah, there's no good answers. I think this is one of the hardest things about talking about NFL and stuff is sometimes it's hard to admit that there's not a great answer at the quarterback spot, right?
Well,
we're going through this right now for the Giants. I don't believe Shorter Sanders is worth the 3rd overall pick. And it's like, okay, what do you do? How do you get a quarterback next? Like, I don't know. I cannot tell you. I don't have this perfect plan. You have to get lucky at the quarterback spot sometimes.
You do, because there's not 32 dudes walking the earth that can do this.
Yep.
That is amazing that out of the 330 gazillion people there are on this planet, that there aren't 32 who can do this at an amazing rate. And I suppose the question is, how did the Steelers get to this point? Is it strictly because they put all of their financials on the defensive side of the football and that they didn't draft a quarterback the last few years of Ben's tenure? I'd have to go back and look and see which quarterbacks were available. I mean, I hate doing the revisionist history that, well, look at the number of teams that passed on this guy and that sort of stuff. We're talking about realistically. Like, remember
the only one I could think of is Jordan Love.
Or even like, they even passed up. Well, Jordan Love, that was a couple years ago, but even like Will Levis. But you're not losing sleep over passing on him.
No.
They win too many games. They haven't had 1 year, like at least the Colts. The Colts had that 1 year where they sucked and they took Anthony Richardson. That hasn't really worked out for them, but at least they took somebody that they want to believe in. But the Steelers haven't had that opportunity, and the only year that they had an opportunity to do so was when Kenny Pickett was the first quarterback taken in the draft.
Well, let's be honest. How many teams? I can only think of the Kansas City Chiefs that have taken a huge swing, who traded up from 27, where they were a playoff team, all the way to 10 to go get Patrick Mahomes, right? They could have continued on with Alex Smith as their guy moving forward. Yeah. They went for it's probably the biggest move that I can remember ever in terms of going after a quarterback and going to get him. You know how hard it is to move up 17 spots? That is not an easy thing to do, particularly when you already are a playoff team and you're like, wait a second, we're going for some guy who runs this crazy offense and doesn't even have a winning record in college. But man, they had the foresight. Like, the Steelers never had that, and they weren't willing to do it because they didn't want to ruffle the feathers of Ben Roethlisberger. They've been too afraid to say anything. How crazy is it that this big bad organization known as the Pittsburgh Steelers have handled the quarterback solution quiz this poorly?
Yeah, again, like you said, I don't think there's been an aggressive move up like the Mahomes thing. Like, the only thing I can think of is Wentz to the Eagles trading up for Carson Wentz. I think they traded up from like 16 or 17 to 2.
Yeah, they went middle of the first round all the way to 2.
Or the RG3 trade. Like, I'm trying to think of there hasn't been that again. So that's why, as much as it's got to be so. Hey, I'm living it right now. It's frustrating, right? It's like, all right, but what are the options? At least with the Giants, we can go back and look at 2020. It's like, yeah, Justin Herbert was looking us right in the face. Could have just quit on Daniel Jones after his rookie year and did that. I know people will use last year. I'm not going to do that. It's unfortunately, you have to get somewhat lucky, right? Like, the Cincinnati Bengals are lucky that with Andy Dalton, their worst year was the year Joe Burrow came out, right?
100%.
Like, they were paying Andy Dalton, right? The Chargers were paying Phillip Rivers when they got Justin Herbert. Lamar Jackson, I guess Lamar Jackson is the other answer, Rose, but Big Ben was still playing pretty damn good ball at that point. And the Steelers were a really good team. So I guess Lamar Jackson would be the other answer, but it's hard. It's really hard. Like, you have to get lucky. And the Giants, if the Giants won 3 games last year, they would have had either Drake May or Jaden Daniels. They win 3 games this year and they're picking 3rd.
I hear you. I think about it all the time. One last quarterback point, and I think it's an important one. You were basically screaming at the Vikings, hey, J.J. McCarthy, you traded up for him. This is your guy. Go start him. I've had a couple days to sit here and think about it. Is it really fair, particularly with what they have now done in free agency and adding some veteran good players along the defensive line? And offensive line as well. Like they feel like a pretty complete team to give it over to a very young quarterback who we don't know if he can play at this level. Is it irresponsible to not at least really strongly consider bringing Aaron Rodgers in the building?
Then my question is, why did you trade up for J.J. McCarthy? Because I don't think you had that much faith in him.
Okay, I think that these are separate issues to me. They really are, because I don't think they expected to be as good as they were last year with Sam Darnold, and they were. They were this close to being the 1 seed in the NFC, right? Right? They lose that Sunday night football game at Detroit, or else they would have been the 1 seed. So this team feels pretty complete, doesn't it, Penik? Why in the world would you turn the keys over to a kid that's 22 and look like he was 3 pounds the last time we saw him?
Well, and again, I because you traded up for him, which you said, and you took him in the first round. That's why.
That should take a lot of conviction to do.
Because you have conviction. Because you had conviction to take him in the first place, and you bring in Aaron Rodgers, and probably Aaron Rodgers is not going to play bad enough where he is going to be benched on the Minnesota Vikings. So then you're talking about, well, when do you actually turn to J.J. McCarthy? Which I guess, hey, year 3, it's not unheard of to, in today's NFL, to now give the reins over to a quarterback in year 3, and then, hey, he'll still be, I think, like 23 years old, and it's not like we're talking about a guy that's 25, 26. So it's not unheard of, but if you had such a belief that they even had that second first-round pick that they wound up taking Dallas Turner with, they had that as ammo, because they were even willing to move up further if they felt like they needed to do that to get J.J. McCarthy. That's at least my running theory, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. So if you have that conviction to even trade up twice for him, then maybe there gets to a point where maybe you should play him. But if they're having conversations in the building about, hey, we don't trust this kid to play, then Rodgers would make sense.
Do you think that they're a Super Bowl contender if they sign Aaron Rodgers right now, Bobby?
Yeah. I mean, that team is so good.
Then why wouldn't you do it? You can't just say,
because if you
one spot.
Okay, but and again, I'm not saying they shouldn't do it, because if I took over the GM job right now, I think I'd be in on Aaron Rodgers for them. But if to trade up in the first round for a quarterback takes a lot of conviction. So if you have that conviction, why don't you think that you're opening up a Super Bowl window in the next year to 3 years with that quarterback, right? You drafted him to take you to the Super Bowl, not to be an average quarterback. So, but even if he's an above average quarterback, like, that system is sick. It's the easiest. It's one of the easiest landing spots I've ever seen for a rookie quarterback. So if you believed in him, then he should make you a Super Bowl contender. Okay, because Aaron Rodgers is not what he once was either.
But we think he's better than J.J. McCarthy right now. Shouldn't that be the question? Because you do have 5 years if you want to exercise a guy's option. The Packers didn't know what they had on Jordan Love until he started year 4 of his contract. Year 4. So why not make J.J. McCarthy wait 1 more year, and then we'll deal with it from there. And if Aaron Rodgers doesn't take us to the promised land, so be it. But this is an organization that hasn't been to the Super Bowl since losing Super Bowl 11. They've never won one of these things. So why wouldn't you? Don't you have? I mean,
because I don't think Aaron Rodgers is the MVP level quarterback that he once was, right?
But
we're not saying it's because Aaron Rodgers doesn't make the Steelers a Super Bowl contender. He makes the Vikings, who you said, like, we're so close because of how good that team is, take the next step. So why not show some faith in that young quarterback and put him in the easiest landing spot of all time, and hope that you are developing for Super Bowl within the next 3 years with that roster and your quarterback on a cheap contract?
I don't know. I just don't feel like – I thought like there was a huge gap between Drake May, who went 3rd, and J.J. McCarthy, who wasn't even the 4th
Trust
quarterback.
Me, I'm on the same page as you. But
so if that's the point, I still have more faith in 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers that he could get the Vikings pointed in the right direction in 2025 than J.J. McCarthy, whom I don't know what the NFL skill set looks like.
Okay, but what if they drafted Michael Penix and he had the 3 games that he had last year, where it's like there's a lot of missed throws, but some really good flashes in there? Are we having the same conversation, or is it simply just because J.J. McCarthy was injured?
But that's where we are.
But I'm saying, would Michael Penix's 3 games be enough to stop you from doing Aaron Rodgers?
No, because I don't think.
All right, then okay, then
no.
yeah, okay, then
no. I mean, I also don't think that the Falcons are anywhere close to what the Vikings are. So I'm really
No, but I'm
just
saying if the
looking at this-
Vikings drafted Michael Penix.
I get it, but all I'm saying is that if Michael Penix was in the same situation and with that team, yeah, I would want to go get somebody that I felt like I definitely knew what I had at quarterback, or at least had a better grasp of it, even if he is 40.
Yeah, if Matthew Stafford was available, then I'm probably on the same page as you, Rose. But I don't think Rodgers is the MVP form of himself.
Yeah. Well, he's not. He's not.
And we also just spent part of the show talking about how, at least I thought, and foolishly thought that Aaron Rodgers may humble himself a little bit after the last 2 years, and maybe that's part of Minnesota's decision making is, okay, is this guy going to come in here? Is this guy going to come in here and be a saint simply because we have a really good head coach and a really good surrounding cast? Is like, I'm sure maybe that's part of their thought process as well.
Maybe. All right, let's move on. Some feel that after free agency that the San Francisco 49ers are no longer a true contender in the NFC. Bobby, are you one of those people? Long pause.
Because they're not my favorite, and they're not even my top 3 for favorite. And they lost Hargrave since the last time we had this conversation. Rose, Travarius Ward goes to the Colts. I don't think they're out of the conversation. I'll say this: they're my NFC West pick next year, most likely.
Over the Rams?
Yeah, why not? It's basing a lot on health, but the Rams is based a lot on health as well too. Puka's gotten hurt, Stafford's gotten hurt before. I love the Rams, but the 49ers are still extremely talented, and they've drafted well, and they have young players who showed some promise, and they'll probably draft well again this year. I know everything went to shit last year, and maybe this is all based on how healthy is Christian McCaffrey.
Yes.
And maybe I can leave in that, antidote. It's like, if Christian McCaffrey's healthy, then yes. If he's not, then no. But they're still an extremely talented team. They have all pros all over the field.
So I would say this. For people that have kind of lost track, they lost Travarius Ward, Floyd, Collins, Hargrave, all from that front line. Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga, who's obviously had his injury issues. Same with Greenlaw in recent years. Juszczyk, they're getting rid of as well. They did bring in Penik and Grant to kind of help in the secondary a little bit on the back end. Demarcus Robinson, I thought was, he's been a touchdown machine for the Rams. So that gives them Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Robinson. They'll probably get some sort of receiver in this draft. So you mentioned about the importance of this draft. They've got 8 picks in the first 4 rounds. They've got 2 in the third, 2 in the fourth to go along with a first and a second. Last year's draft class was really, really good, I thought. Pearsall, we know what happened with him with the shooting, but then back half of the year when he got active, particularly the last third of the year, really played well. Pooney, good on the offensive line. Mustafa is going to slide in for Hufanga. Isaac Guerrero, I thought, gave them some nice bursts and is a really speedy player. He's going to take on more of I think, a bigger role behind Christian McCaffrey this year. But the 2023 draft, outside of Jair Brown, nothing. The 2022 draft, they got their quarterback, but that was it. So they really haven't gotten these depth pieces that you need exodus like they have had right now. So I think it's really incumbent on some guys who maybe they didn't think would be there and have to help out to do something this year. And that's why they feel like an 8-win team to me, Penik.
Yeah, I am a little bit lukewarm on the 49ers, but I'm holding out a good amount of hope. Because if we really like this year's draft class, 5 picks inside the top 113, and I think they have a total of 12 rows. You might have already said that. Here are the top 5 teams in explosive pass plays last year, going from 5 to 1. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Green Bay Packers at 4, the Lions at 3, the Vikings at 2, and surprisingly enough, it is the San Francisco 49ers at 1. And I really do think that passing offense is impacted when Christian McCaffrey went out, because I think he does add more than any other running back in the NFL. I think he adds the threat of receiving, and I think Kyle Shanahan knows exactly how to use Christian McCaffrey in the receiving game. And I think the overall passing offense for the 49ers did suffer last year, but explosivity-wise, they still produced a lot of explosive plays. And really, I still think this is a top 10 offense because you have Kyle Shanahan. I think Brock Purdy has taken steps up, even though he gets criticized. Ayuk is good. Pearsall's going to hopefully, you still have Kittle. Offensive line is, Kyle Shanahan knows how to scheme past an offensive line that may have some deficiency issues. So I'm not worried about the offense. What I am worried about is this defense and a lack of defensive identity. Now, I am so glad that Robert Saleh's back because I think he's going to bring an identity. And I think he's, one of the best defensive minds in football. But that talent there, like if Yetur Gross-Matos is our number 2 edge across from Nick Bosa, I'm not loving that. Hopefully Drake Jackson gets healthy, stays healthy, takes some steps up. That's a player I like. But you just look up and down this front, and besides Nick Bosa, there's not really a name that you want to go to and be like, yeah, that's like a dude. That's a guy that can really kind of take them places. So they need to get an identity that they had back in 2022 when Nick Bosa won that Defensive Player of the Year. But there were other dudes on that defense that helped make that work. I think offensively, they're going to be fine. Defensively, you got to get back to being close to top 10, because if you're below average, the 49ers are just going to be a middling team.
How important is the addition of Robert Saleh to that defense?
It's huge. I think it's their biggest offseason upgrade so far.
Yep. And also,
I think those are names that they lost on the front. I don't think those names were necessarily living up to their names, with Leonard Floyd and Javon Hargrave and
not at all.
Crew.
No, and when you release guys in their 30s, I can live with that. It's like the Dre Greenlaws of the world, right? Who's still, I think, 27 years old. And I understand it to the standpoint of the injury. But, man, when you had Green and Fred Warner, I mean, that's as good a group in the middle as you can get. We'll see where they go. So Greenlaw has a new home. It's Denver. I think we all are in agreement that we like what they have done so far in free agency with their offseason. Is it now enough to push Kansas City atop the AFC West? Penik, you can start with this one.
I think the talent is closer, for sure. The Broncos' defense was better than the Chiefs last year. What's going to really bridge the gap between Denver and Kansas City isn't necessarily the roster. It's honestly like, we got to wait for Kansas City to stop winning so many freaking games. And is the pendulum eventually going to swing the other way where the Kansas City Chiefs start losing these one-score games? And if that answer is yes, then, hey, I think the Broncos, if they add more dynamic weapons, I think they need to add more speed. For how good that offensive line is, I do think that passing game should be a little bit better. It should take steps up. It really took a big step up in the second half of the year. I think their running game should be dynamic, and they need to add a little bit more of a dynamic runner. It's a very good running back draft, and I think that's where Sean Payton's going to look. I actually really love the addition of Evan Ingram, adding speed at that tight end. Don't ask him to block.
You want to increase the run game, and then Evan Ingram's not your starting tight end.
Well, yeah, and that's the worry of adding a guy like Evan Ingram is how much is it going to impact that? And you just signed a guy for a lot of money, and you may only have him on the field for X amount of percentage of snaps. But for me, it's Kansas City needs to start losing games if we're going to start bridging this gap between the two. Because I think on paper, they're getting there. But Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are always going to take the Chiefs' places.
Also, the Chargers are in this conversation, too. I mean,
Sure they are.
The Broncos didn't even finish second place in the division last year. So that defense, I'm really excited for it. Defense it's just hard to have the number one defense 2 years in a row. It's just for some reason, no matter what you keep together, defenses seem to not have the same consistency that offense has because you don't have that one position like a quarterback that holds you afloat. I think the Chargers, I don't think they've bridged it. If Bo Nix is real deal and takes more steps forward, then yeah, absolutely. But I think this division is low-key tough now that you add Geno Smith into the conversation with the Raiders. They can win on any given Sunday where they really weren't in that conversation last year. That the Patrick Mahomes part of this, they're going to rise to the top in this division at the end of the day.
I think Denver's right there. I really believe it. I will tip my cap to Sean Payton and the job he did with Bo Nix, because I thought he was way better than I anticipated. I thought his ability to throw the ball downfield when asked to superseded any of my thought process going into last year. You know, you guys ripped on Evan Ingram, and you guys see him as this 20-year-old you draft out of Ole Miss, and yes, he's not a run blocker, but the Broncos had major tight end deficiencies in the catch game, and few tight ends do a better job of converting third downs for first downs than Evan Ingram. Only the Giants and Cowboys had fewer red zone targets toward their tight end than the Denver Broncos last year. So that's going to change as well. So this was a strategic move by them. And, a lot of mock drafts had them getting Colston Loveland with the 20th pick this year, the tight end out of Michigan. This frees them up. If somehow Genty falls, which I don't think he'll fall the way, or if they feel like Overton is the right kid out of North Carolina, or if they want to trade back and get an extra pick or two, I mean, like, they're in good shape. I like what they've done this offseason more than I have the Chargers, which is why I didn't throw them in the question here.
I've liked their offseason better than the Chargers too. I mean, the Chargers have had more volume, but some of them, I don't like some of the receivers they've brought in. I don't love Najee Harris. I thought they would bring in somebody a little bit more dynamic, but we'll see. There's still the draft left, and we're probably going to love the Chargers draft.
Okay. Before we get out of here, there's still some big names out there in free agency. Who is the one guy that you're surprised is still available? And make a case for him, Bobby.
Amari Cooper. I figured that there would be some contending team that would say, hey, he had a lot of drops in Cleveland. He got thrown in the Buffalo late in the mix. But, I mean, he was, we're 1 year off of him being off back-to-back, really good seasons for the Browns. He's not 32, 33 like the other, vet receivers that are available. I'm surprised that the Kansas City Chiefs or the Buffalo Bills bringing him back. Like, I'm just surprised a contending team hasn't brought in Amari Cooper and thrown some real money at him.
I don't know. Obviously I've watched him very closely the last few years. He only had 20 catches in 8 games with Buffalo. 20 catches. I mean, only 32 targets. It's 4 a game for a guy who's been a highly decorated receiver.
I agree, but usually when we're talking about like these types of wide receiver vets, they're 32, 33, and it's DeAndre. He's only 30 years old. I know he'll be 31 for the season. Yeah. I just feel like I'm surprised no team has thrown at him like a 2-year, $25 million contract. And maybe they have, and that's Amari Cooper's not taking that. But if you told me between DeAndre Hopkins or Cooper Kupp or whatever, I think Amari Cooper would be my pick. In fact, I'm surprised the Patriots have not made a play on him, and supposedly they might be out on Cooper Kupp. So Amari Cooper is a little surprising to me.
Penik?
Rose, I'm going to say 2 players because I'm willing to bet an insignificant body part that you're not going to talk about the offensive line. So I'm going to go with Cam Robinson and Tevin Jenkins, where Cam Robinson, for being an average tackle, and that's what he is an average tackle. I think he is the best left tackle that was available on the market for free agency, and I think there are a lot of teams that could use a left tackle, where even if you have to overpay him, I think Cam Robinson is okay. I don't think he's bad. I think he's okay. As long as you kind of know that you're getting that, you can improve your offensive line. And Tevin Jenkins, too, who actually did legit play well and is very young and kind of revitalized his career as the years have gone on with the Chicago Bears. I'm kind of shocked to see the money that Aaron Banks got, because I think that Tevin Jenkins is a better player than Aaron Banks. I especially think as a pass blocker, maybe Aaron Banks has got him edged as a run blocker, maybe not. So the fact that Tevin Jenkins is still unsigned, maybe there's some injury questions, but other than that, can't think of a reason why a young good guard shouldn't be somewhere.
I thought actually that with Aaron Banks making the move to the NFC North, I thought that maybe Jenkins going to San Francisco to take his place would have been a good move.
Yeah.
But, once again, they've got some sort of cap issue. Maybe they don't now. I don't know. Well, we'll see. For me, I'm going edge rusher. Zadarius Smith can still play at age 33. He had 9 sacks last year, split between Cleveland and Detroit. My guess is with a guy like Z that it's a money issue. It's always been the contract has always been at the forefront of discussions with him, and good for him. He's made a lot of money, and he's had a highly productive career. He's got 69 career sacks, but he could still do it at this age. And do you need him to play 50 snaps a game? No. But more and more we see teams coming in with packages, and they say, well, maybe our 4 isn't significantly better than your front 4 defensive line-wise, but our 8 are awesome. And so he could be a big part of the next group that comes in for some team that wants to go get the passer. So I think that Zadarius Smith is going to find a home. It'll just be curious for how much. It'll be a 1-year deal, but can he get $10, $12 million like Joey Bosa did? I mean, I'll be honest with you. Joey Bosa might be a bigger name. I would put Zadarius Smith's pass rushing skills past Joey Bosa at this point of his career.
Yep.
That's what I would say. So there you go. All right. So next week, maybe we'll have some sort. Do we think that we'll have an answer on the quarterback situations? Yes or no? Anybody? Will there be a big signing this weekend? You think so?
Russell Wilson. It's going to happen at the most inconvenient time for me.
Okay. Penik?
And me too. I hope not. Let's reconvene Monday at noon, and then everybody can resume all talks. Have a great weekend, everyone.
That sounds
Don't
great.
do anything.
That's right. So for Bobby Skinner and Justin Penik and producer Connor, always does a bang-up job on the show, I am Chris Rose. We will see you next week here on Football Today.
Russell Wilson to the Giants.
Don't say that.
Just kidding.